Picture yourself walking into a modern supermarket. You pass shelves lined with foods from every corner of the world: chocolate from Switzerland, coffee from Colombia, rice from Thailand, olive oil from Italy. Then you reach the produce section. There, sitting quietly in a small basket, is garlic. It isn't expensive, it isn't rare. Most people barely notice it. Yet this ordinary-looking bulb has been treasured by pharaohs, carried by conquering armies, prescribed by ancient physicians, feared by vampires, and studied by modern scientists. Few plants in history have earned that kind of reputation. How did a wild plant growing in the mountains of Central Asia become one of humanity's oldest companions? The answer takes us back long before pyramids pierced the Egyptian skyline, before Rome ruled an empire, and before history itself was written. This is the history of garlic. For more than 5,000 years, garlic has crossed deserts, sailed across oceans, survived the collapse of empires, and found a place in nearly every major cuisine on Earth. Entire civilizations believed it could make workers stronger, athletes faster, soldiers braver, the sick healthier. Some even believed it could keep death itself at a distance. That raises an obvious question. What did they know that we don't? Was garlic really the world's first superfood? Or has humanity spent thousands of years believing one of history's greatest myths? To answer that question, we have to travel back to a time before history had a name. Long before kings ruled kingdoms, before pyramids rose above the Egyptian desert, before the first Olympic Games, there was a wild plant growing in the harsh mountains of Central Asia. Unlike delicate fruits that spoiled within days or grains that demanded fertile fields, this plant seemed almost impossible to kill. It survived freezing winters, scorching summers, rocky hillsides. Even after being pulled from the ground, it could remain edible for months. For the earliest human communities, that wasn't just useful, it was extraordinary. Food security was one of humanity's greatest challenges. A failed hunt or a poor harvest could mean starvation. Any plant that stayed fresh for weeks or even months was worth protecting. People began carrying garlic bulbs as they migrated. When they settled in new lands, they planted the largest cloves instead of eating them. Without realizing it, they were performing one of humanity's earliest agricultural experiments. Generation after generation, they selected stronger plants, larger bulbs, better harvests. Slowly, wild garlic became cultivated garlic. Unlike wheat, garlic didn't require vast open fields. Unlike fruit trees, it didn't take years before producing food. A single clove planted in the soil could eventually become an entirely new bulb. That simple characteristic made garlic remarkably easy to spread. As trade routes slowly formed across Asia, merchants carried more than precious stones and woven fabrics. They carried ideas, religions, languages, and plants. Garlic quietly traveled with them. No king ordered its expansion. No empire forced people to grow it. It spread because ordinary people kept choosing it. Wherever families settled, garlic often settled with them. Eventually, those trade routes led to one of history's greatest civilizations, ancient Egypt. The Egyptians mastered architecture, engineering, mathematics, and agriculture on a scale the ancient world had never seen. Every year, the Nile flooded its banks, leaving behind rich soil capable of feeding millions. It was here that garlic's reputation began to grow into something almost legendary. Building the pyramids required tens of thousands of skilled laborers. Contrary to popular myth, these weren't simply slaves chained together under the whip. Many were paid workers who lived in organized communities, received medical care, and were supplied with food by the state. Among the foods regularly issued to them was garlic. To Egyptian officials, it wasn't merely another vegetable. It was considered fuel. They believed garlic helped workers maintain strength during long days, spent hauling multi-ton stone blocks beneath the relentless desert sun. Whether that belief was scientifically accurate didn't matter. The workers believed it too. According to ancient accounts, when garlic rations were interrupted, laborers protested. Imagine that for a moment, not over gold, not over wages, not over freedom, over garlic. That alone tells us how valuable it had become. Its importance reached far beyond the construction sites. Egyptian physicians prescribed garlic for stomach disorders, breathing problems, infections, and fatigue. Religious ceremonies included it. Families grew it. Merchants traded it. Even pharaohs carried it into the afterlife. When archaeologists opened the tomb of Tutankhamun, they discovered garlic bulbs placed among the treasures buried beside the young king. Think about that. Gold was buried because it represented wealth. Jewels symbolized power. Garlic represented something even more precious: life. If the Egyptians believed a pharaoh would need garlic in eternity, then this humble bulb had clearly become far more than food. But Egypt wasn't the only civilization placing extraordinary faith in garlic. Across the Mediterranean, another culture was about to give the plant an entirely new reputation. Not as the food of workers, but as the secret weapon of champions. Picture yourself in Greece nearly 2,500 years ago. The sun hangs high above the ancient city of Olympia. Thousands of spectators have gathered from every corner of the Greek world. Merchants crowd the streets. Priests prepare sacrifices to Zeus. Athletes stretch beside marble columns, their entire lives leading to this single moment. There are no energy drinks, no protein shakes, no sports scientists, no performance-enhancing supplements. Instead, many competitors reach for something far less glamorous: a clove of garlic. Before stepping into the arena, wrestlers chew it. Runners swallow it. Fighters believe it will strengthen their bodies and sharpen their courage. Whether garlic truly improved athletic performance is almost beside the point. The athletes believed it did. And in competition, confidence can be as powerful as muscle. To the ancient Greeks, victory wasn't just about winning a race. Olympic champions returned home as heroes. Some received free meals for life. Others had statues built in their honor. Entire cities celebrated their success. If garlic offered even the smallest advantage, it was worth eating. But athletes weren't the only people putting their faith in the pungent white bulb. Greek soldiers marched for weeks across rocky mountains carrying bronze armor, heavy shields, long spears, and supplies on their backs. A single campaign could cover hundreds of miles under blistering heat. Food had to be simple, portable, reliable. Garlic checked every box. It survived long journeys without spoiling. It flavored otherwise bland meals. And perhaps most importantly, soldiers believed it made them stronger before battle. That belief became part of military culture. Long before psychology became a science, commanders understood something important. A soldier who believes he is stronger often fights like he is. Garlic became more than nutrition. It became morale. Yet perhaps garlic's greatest supporter in ancient Greece wasn't an athlete or a general. It was a doctor. His name was Hippocrates. Today, physicians around the world still recognize his legacy through the Hippocratic Oath, a symbol of medical ethics that has endured for centuries. Unlike many healers of his time, Hippocrates encouraged observation instead of superstition. Rather than blaming every illness on angry gods, he carefully studied symptoms, diets, and the natural world. Again and again, one plant appeared in his writings: garlic. He recommended it for digestive problems, breathing difficulties, intestinal parasites, and general weakness. Of course, Hippocrates didn't understand bacteria or viruses. Those discoveries lay more than 2,000 years in the future. but he understood something equally important. Nature often provided useful medicines if people paid attention. Garlic wasn't magic. It was experience. Centuries of watching patients recover had convinced physicians that this humble plant deserved a permanent place in their medical toolkit, and the Greeks weren't alone. Far to the east, physicians in India and China were reaching surprisingly similar conclusions. Ancient Ayurvedic texts from India praised garlic for supporting digestion, circulation, and overall vitality. Although some monks avoided it because they believed its strong flavor stimulated earthly desires, healers continued prescribing it for practical medicine. Meanwhile, in China, garlic became deeply rooted in traditional medical practice. Doctors used it to treat digestive complaints, respiratory illnesses, and infections, believing it helped restore balance within the body. Think about what makes this so remarkable. These civilizations developed largely independent of one another. Different languages, different religions, different philosophies, different medical traditions. Yet all of them singled out the same plant. Coincidence, or evidence that garlic possessed qualities people kept rediscovering? No one knew the answer, not yet. But another civilization was about to spread garlic farther than anyone before: the Romans. If the Greeks admired garlic, the Romans industrialized it. By the 1st century AD, Rome controlled one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. More than 60 million people lived under Roman rule, connected by an astonishing network of roads stretching over 50,000 miles. Those roads carried armies, merchants, messengers, ideas. And garlic. Roman legions depended on careful logistics. Every soldier required food that could survive weeks of marching through forests, deserts, mountains, and frozen frontiers. Fresh vegetables spoiled quickly. Garlic did not. It became a standard part of military life. Legionaries crushed it into stews, mixed it with bread, and ate it alongside onions and grains. Officers believed it helped maintain endurance during exhausting campaigns. Whether or not it truly increased physical strength, it certainly increased one thing: confidence. As Roman armies conquered new territories, garlic quietly conquered them too. When soldiers established camps, nearby settlements adopted Roman farming techniques. When merchants followed the legions, garlic appeared in local markets. When veterans retired in distant provinces, they planted familiar crops from home. Without realizing it, the Romans transformed garlic from a regional plant into a continental one. But garlic's rise wasn't welcomed by everyone. Roman writer Horace once complained bitterly after eating an especially garlic-heavy meal, joking that it felt more like poison than food. Even in ancient Rome, garlic divided opinions. Some praised its flavor, others dreaded its smell. 2,000 years later, not much has changed. Yet while wealthy Romans argued over dinner, something much more significant was happening beneath the surface. Garlic was quietly becoming one of history's first truly global crops. It had traveled from the mountains of Central Asia, to the banks of the Nile, to the stadiums of Greece, and across the vast highways of the Roman Empire. Its journey seemed unstoppable. But garlic's greatest test was still to come. An invisible enemy was approaching Europe, an enemy that no sword could defeat, an enemy so deadly that entire cities would fall silent. And once again, millions of frightened people would place their faith in one small white bulb. By the middle of the 14th century, Europe had entered an age of fear. It wasn't just war, or famine, or political unrest. Something far worse was coming. In 1347, ships began arriving at Mediterranean ports carrying more than silk, spices, and precious cargo. Hidden aboard them was one of the deadliest diseases in human history. Within months, healthy villages became ghost towns. Church bells rang so often they became part of everyday life. Gravediggers couldn't keep up with the dead. Parents buried children. Children buried parents. Sometimes, entire families disappeared before anyone realized they were sick. The disease would become known as the Black Death. Historians estimate that it killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population in just a few years. No medicine could stop it. No king could command it. No army could fight it. The enemy was invisible. Today, we know the plague was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, spread primarily through fleas carried by rats. But medieval Europe had no microscopes, no germ theory, no understanding of bacteria. When people cannot see the cause of a disaster, they create explanations they can understand. Some blamed poisoned air. Others believed the stars had aligned in an unlucky pattern. Many saw the plague as divine punishment. And countless people searched desperately for anything that might keep death away. Among the most trusted remedies was garlic. People crushed garlic into drinks. They rubbed it onto their skin. They hung bundles above their doors. Some carried cloves in small cloth pouches around their necks wherever they went. It wasn't simply medicine anymore. It had become a symbol of hope. Looking back, it's easy to dismiss these practices as superstition, but history deserves more nuance than that. Although garlic could never have stopped the Black Death, the people using it weren't irrational. They were making decisions based on generations of observation. For thousands of years, families had noticed something curious. Garlic seemed to help wounds heal. It appeared to reduce certain infections. It often made sick people feel better. Without laboratories or scientific instruments, experience was the closest thing they had to evidence. And sometimes, experience points in the right direction long before science explains why. Centuries later, scientists discovered that crushing garlic releases a sulfur-containing compound called allicin. Allicin has demonstrated antibacterial and antifungal activity in laboratory studies, helping explain why garlic earned such a remarkable medical reputation throughout history. Ancient physicians didn't know the word allicin. They didn't need to. They simply knew garlic often seemed different from other plants. That mystery allowed its reputation to grow even larger. Soon, garlic was no longer protecting people from disease alone. It was protecting them from the supernatural. Across Europe, stories spread of creatures that hunted under the cover of darkness. Witches, demons, restless spirits, and eventually, vampires. Today, the image is instantly recognizable. A frightened villager hangs garlic above the front door before sunset. It's one of the oldest horror traditions still alive in modern culture. But where did it come from? No one knows for certain. One theory suggests garlic's overpowering smell made people associate it with purity. Strong odors often mask the stench of disease and decay, making garlic seem capable of driving away corruption itself. Another theory is more practical. Garlic had already earned a reputation for protecting people from illness. As medicine blended with folklore, its protective powers gradually expanded beyond the natural world. If it could repel disease, perhaps it could repel evil too. Over time, stories evolved. People placed garlic beneath pillows. They rubbed it around windows. They hung braided bulbs from ceilings. Travelers carried cloves in their pockets. Entire households treated garlic as a silent guardian standing watch through the night. The irony is fascinating. The very same plant trusted by respected physicians was also trusted to keep mythical monsters away. Few objects in history have existed so comfortably in both science and superstition. Yet garlic's strange journey wasn't finished. While Europe wrestled with plague and folklore, another revolution was quietly taking shape. Ships were becoming larger. Maps were becoming more accurate. Nations were searching for new trade routes across the oceans. The age of exploration had begun, Explorers packed food carefully before leaving port. Fresh vegetables spoiled within days. Meat had to be salted. Water often became unsafe to drink. Garlic, however, remained reliable. It stored well, added flavor to preserved foods, required very little space, and according to centuries of tradition, helped sailors stay healthy, so it sailed with them. Portuguese ships carried it around Africa. Spanish expeditions transported it across the Atlantic. Merchants introduced it to ports that had never seen it before. Unlike gold or silver, garlic wasn't fought over. It didn't enrich kings overnight. Instead, it accomplished something far more remarkable. It quietly became part of ordinary life. Everywhere it arrived, people discovered the same thing. It was easy to grow, easy to store, easy to cook, and impossible to forget. Soon, garlic was growing in the Americas. It appeared in colonial gardens, monastery kitchens, village farms, and city markets. Once again, it succeeded not because anyone forced people to grow it, but because they wanted to. That may be garlic's greatest achievement. Unlike many famous crops that spread through conquest or commerce alone, garlic spread through trust. Families recommended it to neighbors. Farmers saved the biggest cloves for the next planting season. Mothers passed recipes to daughters. Physicians passed remedies to apprentices, generation after generation. The world's faith in garlic continued to grow. But after nearly 5,000 years of stories, traditions, and beliefs, one question still remained unanswered. Were our ancestors actually right? Did garlic truly possess extraordinary power? Or had humanity simply spent millennia believing one of history's most enduring legends? The answer would not come from kings, or priests, or folklore. It would come from science. For most of human history, garlic's reputation rested on stories. Stories passed from parents to children, from physicians to apprentices, from soldiers to new recruits. No one could explain why garlic seemed different. They only knew that generation after generation refused to stop using it. Then, science finally caught up. As chemistry advanced during the 19th and 20th centuries, researchers began asking a question that ancient civilizations never could. What is actually happening inside a clove of garlic? The answer turned out to be surprisingly clever. Take a whole bulb of garlic and smell it. The aroma is relatively mild. Now crush a single clove. Within seconds, the sharp, unmistakable smell fills the air. Why? Because garlic is protecting itself. Inside every clove are tiny compartments that keep certain chemicals separated. As long as the clove remains intact, they never meet. But the moment an animal bites into it, or a cook slices it with a knife, the walls of those compartments break apart. An enzyme called alliinase immediately comes into contact with a compound called allicin. Within moments, they react to create a new substance, allicin. Allicin is responsible for garlic's signature smell, but more importantly, it serves as the plant's natural defense system against fungi, bacteria, and insects. In other words, that powerful aroma wasn't designed for us. It evolved to help garlic survive. Ironically, the very smell that some people try to avoid is one of the reasons garlic has survived for thousands of years. Modern researchers have spent decades studying allicin and dozens of other sulfur compounds found in garlic. Laboratory experiments have shown that some of these compounds can inhibit the growth of certain bacteria and fungi under controlled conditions. Other studies suggest garlic may contribute to heart health, support normal blood pressure in some people, and provide antioxidant compounds as part of a healthy diet. These findings are fascinating. But they're also a reminder that science is careful. Researchers don't call garlic a miracle cure. They don't claim it can replace antibiotics. They don't recommend it as a substitute for professional medical treatment. Instead, they paint a more balanced picture. Garlic isn't magic. but it isn't ordinary either. And perhaps that's exactly why so many civilizations kept returning to it. The more scientists learned, the more another mystery emerged. If garlic has been cultivated for thousands of years, why does almost every garlic plant on Earth look so similar? The answer is unlike almost any other major crop. Most plants reproduce through seeds. Garlic usually doesn't. Instead, people plant individual cloves. Each clove grows into an entirely new bulb. That means many garlic plants are essentially genetic copies of earlier generations. Imagine taking one page from a book, making an identical copy, then repeating the process for thousands of years. That's remarkably close to how garlic has spread across much of the world. Every planting season, farmers choose the healthiest bulbs, the largest cloves, the strongest plants. Then they plant them again. It's a tradition so ancient that no one knows exactly when it began. Think about that for a moment. When you hold a clove of garlic today, you're holding the latest chapter in a chain of cultivation stretching back thousands of years. Not through accident, not through chance, but through countless human hands making the same simple decision. This one is worth planting again. That may be garlic's greatest achievement, not that it survived history, but that humanity chose to preserve it again and again and again. Empires collapsed, trade routes disappeared, languages changed, religions rose and fell. Yet every year, somewhere in the world, someone pressed another garlic clove into the soil. That quiet tradition has outlived kingdoms. Today, garlic is grown in more than 100 countries. Billions of people cook with it every week, often without giving it a second thought. It flavors pasta in Italy, kimchi in Korea, curries in India, stir-fries in China, stews in West Africa, roasted meats in the Middle East, salsas in Mexico. Few ingredients have crossed so many borders so effortlessly. Perhaps that's because garlic has never truly belonged to one civilization. It belongs to humanity. The next time you peel a clove of garlic, pause for just a moment. In your hand is the descendant of a plant first gathered by people who had never seen a city. It fed the workers who built the pyramids, inspired athletes chasing Olympic glory, marched with Roman legions across continents, comforted frightened families during the plague, sailed aboard ships exploring unknown oceans, seasoned the meals of emperors and ordinary farmers alike. It became medicine before medicine understood disease. It became folklore before science understood chemistry. And somehow, through every war, every empire, every migration, and every generation, it endured, not because it was the rarest plant, or the most beautiful, or the most expensive, but because billions of ordinary people found it useful enough to keep passing it on. History often celebrates kings, generals, and inventors. Yet sometimes, the greatest stories belong to the ordinary objects we use every single day. Objects so familiar that we rarely stop to ask where they came from or how they quietly changed the world. If this documentary changed the way you'll look at garlic forever, imagine what you'll discover about the other everyday things surrounding you. Here at Exhibit A, we uncover the hidden histories behind the objects you thought you already knew, from the foods on your table to the tools in your home, and the inventions that shaped civilization. If that sounds like your kind of journey, subscribe and join us as we uncover one remarkable story after another. And until the next exhibit, stay curious.